But there was this one night where probably had worked 12 hours, probably got up at 6:30, like laptop in bed, going for it, going hard immediately. Like the tiger was chasing me all day long, and it was not a client-facing day. So I found myself in my office with my laptop at 6:30 at night with my husband calling upstairs and going, "Hey babe, dinner's ready. Come on down." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'll be right down. I just want to get one more thing done." Famous last words, right? Like, how often have you said that? I just want to get one more thing done. And an hour passed and he started dinner without me, and he did not guilt and shame me. I'm very appreciative about that. And yet I had this total wake up moment. I was like, this cannot be the path to success. I'm working really hard. I know I'm good at what I do. I'm a good person, but this cannot be what Beyonce does. This cannot be what Oprah does. This cannot be what Sarah Blakely does, right? Like, come on. What am I doing wrong here?
Hi everyone, welcome to the show, and welcome Amir. It's great to have you.
I'm super excited to be here, Kelly. Let's do this.
It's the other way around, because I was recently on your podcast, and it's so nice that actually even the content I think that we're going to be talking about today is the power of podcasting when it's building a business, building your personal brand. But before we get to that, why don't you give everyone a little bit of a backstory, who you are and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Amira Alvarez. I work with women entrepreneurs, small business owners who are hitting some sort of block in terms of how to scale, and I help them move through those both internal blocks and the tactical strategic blocks that they're facing in order for them to, make bank and a ton of money. So we are very forward facing on, yes, we're helping you scale your income and your revenue. And concurrently, it's about having a great, dynamic, lit up life. So it's not either or, it's about how to have the big life in both fronts. But if you're not making the kind of money you want as a business owner, then you tend to feel trapped. So that's our, how we help, how we really support women.
Nice. And do you do that as a one-on-one? Is it a group thing? What's your model that you have for that?
Yeah. So the Unstoppable Woman, which is the company that I founded and run, does both private coaching, so one-on-one, but also we have events that are open to the public. We have our high-level masterminds. We have group coaching programs. We have a variety of ways that people can access the work that we do. And we also have a ton of free stuff that we love, like our podcast, which is the topic for today, that I do a ton of teaching. At heart, I'm a teacher. I love to break down this complicated topic of success into really concrete ways that people can access it so that they can implement new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new actions to take so that they can really scale.
I love it. So I want to come back to the success piece because I think that's a really interesting word in terms of how people see it and associate it. But before we do, what got you into the space of where you are now? What were you doing? Were you a teacher before when you said at heart that's what you love doing?
Yes and no. So I was a teacher. I had a different business where I taught a modality that was a mind-body modality. Previous to that, I worked in corporate. I ran operations and real estate development for a startup company, and a lot of other things as we are apt to have careers in different functions and areas. But for me, I ended up moving across the country. I live in the United States, and I had the opportunity to start over, if you will, and I decided that I really liked this aspect of what I was doing in my previous work that was related to coaching. And I didn't really understand why I liked it so much, but I really loved helping people, and I could see that I had this aptitude for it. So I went in that direction, and I started this business. And about 3 years in, I love to share my numbers, Kelly, because I think it helps people understand what one version of business looks like. My first year, which was, I don't know, Okay, good. So my first year, sort of 6 to 9 months of that first year, but that first calendar year, I made $30,000. It was like, okay, there's some proof of concept here, but it wasn't enough for the standard of living that I really wanted to live at. And then the second year, I tripled my income and I made $90K. I was very proud of that. However, my goal was that six-figure mark, right? That mythical six-figure mark that, you want to cross. And I hadn't made that, so I was going really hard. And the third year in business, I made $138K. And so that was another, 50K basically. And I felt pretty good about that. I was making good progress. But there was this one night where I, probably had worked 12 hours, probably got up at 6:30, like laptop in bed, going for it, going hard immediately. Like the tiger was chasing me all day long, and it was not a client-facing day. So I found myself in my office with my laptop at 6:30 at night with my husband calling upstairs and going, "Hey, babe, dinner's ready. Come on down." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'll be right down. I just want to get one more thing done." Famous last words, right? Like, how often have you said that? I just want to get one more thing done. And an hour passed and he started dinner without me, and he did not guilt and shame me. I'm very appreciative about that. And yet I had this total wake up moment. I was like, this cannot be the path to success. I'm working really hard. I know I'm good at what I do. I'm a good person, but this cannot be what Beyonce does. This cannot be what Oprah does. This cannot be what Sarah Blakely does, right? Like, come on. What am I doing wrong here? And that was really the conversation in my head. And instead of staying there, which is what I had done previously, like it's not the first time I had that thought, but instead of staying there, I thought, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to study what successful people do. I'm going to learn what success is based on. And I hired a mentor, and I studied every day, and I watched people, and I put together a methodology for myself. Later on, I put together the methodology. But that year 4 in business, I went from 138K to 700K in 1 year. So I 5 times my income. Yeah. And here's the thing, Kelly. I had a goal of making 7 figures, right? I had a goal of making $1 million that year, and I didn't make it. Okay. Again, I was like, oh no, I didn't make my goal. But I had done something so much bigger than that. I realized that I had broken through on the limited perspective of how I was seeing myself, like what I was seeing is really possible for myself. And I started to see this new identity and live it out. And was that easy? Absolutely not. Is it for the faint of heart? No way. It was a lot of facing my demons, facing the fears, all of that. But that's really the genesis for the Unstoppable Woman, because I had to then figure out what I had done so that I could teach it to my clients. And that's the methodology that I was talking about. And I love talking about it. It's an integration of psychology, understanding how your subconscious programming works, and understanding the laws of success, which we can dive into. They're very foundational success principles. They're laws that if you understand how to apply them, you will have success. And then there were things in business that I just realized I had to learn that were like the tactical outer game pieces that you have to understand in order to get ahead. So putting that all together has been really fun. Yeah.
Love it. So I definitely want to dive into the laws of success. But one of the other aspects I just wanted to just touch on was, I love that you have put everything into, that you've shared, the numbers. And I think you've put it into context. And I think that's really important for people that are starting out, that are further in the journey. And it's not a case of, oh, comparison, I'm not there yet, or, oh, wow, I've superseded that. But it's honesty about numbers. And one thing that always really strikes me is, why are people not honest about numbers? Why don't they talk about it?
I think there's a lot of shame around it. I think because people don't understand what it takes So here, let's break this down. We were all trained to be successful by how we went through school. And generally speaking, people have had different schooling experiences, but generally speaking, the teacher or the system tells you what you have to do in order to succeed. There's a structure and it's very delineated. You study for the test and you get the grade, and you dot the I's and you cross the T's. And that's how you get success. Now, when you go into business for yourself and you've been the good student all these years, not everyone is, but let's say that's how you've been brought up. You go into business and there's no structure. There's no one saying this is what success, how to dot the I's, how to study for the test. So you're left kind of using the old skill set, which is work really hard. That was one of my main tools, work really hard. And it's not that there isn't work effort involved, but that cannot be your only tool, okay? But work really hard and do all the small little work. Like in school, you had to have the punctuation correct, and you had to get the math equation correct, and you had to pay attention to all these little details. And it's not that I'm advocating for shoddy work, because I'm not. I have a high standard of excellence. But if you put your attention on those small things and you don't put your attention on the big things, you won't move the needle in your business. And yet we've been trained all those years of upbringing to put our attention on the small things and to do things for other people, for the teacher, for mom and dad, for your best friend, to put other people first. And what ends up happening is you don't do the needle moving work in your business, and you don't scale. You're busy. You do a lot of work, right? Like my wake up moment, I was busy. I was trying to do that next thing on my list, but you don't move ahead.
Can you give some examples of what you would define as needle moving not moments, but needle moving aspects, things, activities? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Fundamentally, it's sales and marketing. Okay. So let me break this down. There's the inner game and there's the outer game, and we have to differentiate between the two. Let's start with that. So and you have to understand what's most important. 80% of success is inner game. Outer game would be sales and marketing. So is hiring team and leadership and doing your books and all of that. There's lots of outer game stuff. But if your inner game isn't strong, you won't do the outer game at the high level that you need to. You'll always come up with excuses or reasons why you can't, or self-sabotage yourself and wonder why it's not working. So you can't just look at the outer game activity. So 80% is inner game. Now, if you stare at your navel and you just go, oh, I'm going to study myself and have self-awareness, but you never put it into action, that doesn't work either. Okay. But what's not needle moving on the outer game is emails. It's not graphic design. It's not even client work. I know that's shocking. That was a shocking thing for me to recognize. I love my clients. I do excellent work. But if you let client work fill your schedule,
you can't grow. Yeah.
You can't grow. Okay. So, but people do. People say, I have to get, we have a lot of lawyers as clients. We have clients in all different industries, and there's always client deliverable work that you have to do. But if you let that fill your schedule because you're afraid to do something else, and that's why we let it fill our schedule, then you won't grow. But sales and marketing, visibility, the podcast, which is where we started off this conversation.
We'll get there eventually.
Getting out there, being right, exactly. Like doing the work, the front end work that's going to grow your business. And I think of, before we hit record on this, we were talking about some other things, and I was saying, we spend a lot of time on the client retention side of things. To me, that is an aspect of sales, because it's easier to keep a customer year over year over year than to find a new customer. So I consider that re-enrollment process, that ascension process, that client happiness process, all of that, I consider that part of the needle moving action, the sales side. But you have to have a really clear picture of all the pieces that you have to be working on.
I think that's great. I love the 80% is inner work and what comes from that as well. And the real honesty piece, about the activities, the graphic design. I mean, the amount of times I speak to people in branding, it's what I do, help people with their personal brand, and they get so hung up on their logo. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a really important part. It is. But people get so stuck in that space that they nearly can't move forward. So I really, really like that. But
can I tell you a funny story on that? So when I first started this business, I spent the first 6 months before I even hung out my shingle, told people what I was doing, building my website, right? And I was so in scarcity that I didn't hire an expert, and I was trying to do it on my own, and I was futzing around with fonts and colors and learning HTML, all this stuff, because I thought I had to bootstrap it. I thought I had to do it all myself. And there's a place for bootstrapping. But what would have been a much better use of time and energy would have been to hire someone, get it done good enough, and iterate as you go.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, Kelly. I believe in branding. We have a very strong brand. If you go to our website, you will see we have a strong brand. I love beauty. I think it's incredibly important to have that clear. I've gone through many graphic designers and found someone that I love, and she's essential to our team, right? And I give her direction, but it's not what I spend. Though when I need to do productive procrastination, like when I need to clear my head, I might do it. But it's not the highest and best use of my time. As is, the personal styling, which is part of the brand. I have a style. It's important to have a style. And I had to step into that as I grew my business. And it's part of our brand. It's not important. It's just, you don't want to lose yourself in that and forget that you have to do inner game work, sales and marketing, and put it all together.
Love that. Yeah, really good. And nice that you touched on the style piece, because we talked about that a lot in your podcast, about how much the personal style transformation made to you as an identity going forward in your brand and in your business. So everyone needs to tune in to the Unstoppable podcast. It is, isn't it?
The Unstoppable Woman podcast.
Unstoppable Woman podcast. Perfect. I'll put the show notes, I'll put in the link so people can connect into that particular episode to find out what we were talking about. And of course, I'll have all your details on the website as well too. What I did want to circle back to, which I know people are probably thinking, I hope she hasn't forgotten to go back and ask the laws of success, because I think success is such an interesting word in terms of what is it people view it. What success is to you is different to me. Let's maybe elaborate, if you don't mind, on that.
Absolutely. So I believe success is achieving the goals that you have set for yourself. It is. And Earl Nightingale has a great definition of success. He says it's it's the continuous progression and worthy pursuit of. Sorry, I'm saying this wrong. It's the continuous journey towards a worthy goal. So he doesn't even say it's achieving the goal. It's the journey. It's that you're focused on achieving that goal. I happen to really like achievement. I don't know about you, Kelly, but I really like achieving my goals. Now, if you only look at achieving your goals and you don't appreciate the journey, what happens is that you set yourself up for disappointment, because sometimes it takes longer than you think it's going to take. Sometimes you get to the goal and you don't have the next goal set, and you're like, why, you're lost at that point. So I do teach my clients how to pay attention to the wins along the way and the journey along the way. So I do believe that's important. But let's say you have a goal that's different from my goal. It's not about the goal. It's about that it's your it's your correct goal, and it's the truth of what you want. So a true desire is absolutely key. And when I was making that big quantum leap from 138 to 700K, my big goal was this $1 million mark, the 7 figures. And that was it hooked me. I was like, could I do that? Could I make that leap in 1 year? And that was a true desire. It didn't come from anyone else. It came from me. And then I started learning these laws, and that true desire piece is part of the laws. And they really helped me understand how to approach business in my life. And there's 7 foundational laws, but one of them, for instance, is the law of cause and effect. For every effect, there is a cause. So we talked earlier about branding. Let's take that you want clients that want to pay you for your product or service. And in order to attract that type of client, you need to be someone. This also has to do with the law of vibration. You have to be someone who's vibrating at that level. And that has everything to do with your internal perspective on yourself, your self-image, your identity, and also how you're presenting yourself, what you see yourself worthy of in your brand. And that's going to attract a certain kind of client. So the cause there is you, the cause there is your branding, the cause there is the level at which you're vibrating, and you're going to get a certain effect. You're going to attract a certain level of client, a certain type of client. And if you understand that for every effect that you want, whether it's income, whether it's relationship, whether it's intimacy, whether it's beauty, there is a cause, and you have to own the fact, you have to take personal responsibility for what that cause is. So there's 7 of these laws. I could go on and on. Like, I teach on this all day long, and I could go on and on and on about this. We actually have a download on it, which I'm happy to share with your audience.
Absolutely. We would love that. Again, I'll pop that in the show notes as well. So out of the 7, which one has had the biggest impact on your success?
Oh, it depends on the day, Kelly. You know, like right now I'm really into the law of cause and effect, but the law of polarity has been huge for me. The law of vibration, the law of relativity. I think the law of polarity, when I finally got it, when I finally understood that if I have an idea, that is something that's in non-form. It's on one pole. And the flip side is the actualization of that idea. And it's in form. It's the concrete manifestation of my idea. But the law of polarity says that everything is here and it's here now, and that nothing is created as half, everything is created as a whole. So if I have an idea of something that I desire, something that I want, that is one half of a whole, and the other half is currently not in form, but I have to become someone who calls it into form. But the potentiality for that is here, and it's here now. So it's up to me. I wouldn't have had this idea or this desire in business. Let's say it's an income goal, or it's an impact goal, or it's you want to build something in your business goal. You wouldn't have that desire if the ways and the means for it wasn't here and here now for you to actualize on it. Now it's up to you, personal responsibility, to make that real. But once I got that, I realized I can get this done. I can make this happen. Yeah.
And then it just becomes effortless.
Yeah, I'm not going to say effortless. I'm going to disagree with you. So the process, the understanding of the process becomes effortless. But here's how it really works for me. Okay, we'll have like the next big goal in the business, and it's like, that's crazy time. How are we going to do that? Right? Like, I want that. I know that the ways and the means are here. I step back, I go into receiving mode, I start getting all the downloads of the ways and the means and the how, and then we start putting it into play on the field of play. And inevitably, there's challenges. Okay? It doesn't always work out perfect, but if you learn to ride the waves, right, and you move through the challenges, then it's you achieve it easier and faster than you ever thought possible. But is there no effort there? I know that effortless can mean a lot of different things, but I have a strong stance that like you show up every day and you do your work, right? You do your genius work in this world. And I know you live that, Kelly. Like you show up and you do your work. It's not like you're like, it's all gonna like rain from heaven without me taking any action. So yeah.
So on that, just when you're talking about, success and getting to the point, I was curious to know, what do you do to celebrate your wins? Or when you crossed your 7 figures, what did you do?
Okay, so daily, I celebrate my wins at the end of the day. Usually it's a short little journaling, but it's really to go back and see what went well, because so often we can just be on to the next. So that's a very important part of my mental health and my process as an entrepreneur, because you can just be on to the next challenge that's over into the next day. In terms of crossing the 7 figures, it's a funny story. I didn't think I made it when I made it. I got to the end of the year and I was like at 999,300 or something. Like it was $700.
Super close.
Super close, but I was short. And I was like, I didn't make it. I was like kind of, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but I was like, fuck, oh, I'm so close. No. And so, I was like, okay, next year we'll get it done. And then I got my profit and loss statement from my bookkeeper, and I was over by, I don't know, I can't remember what it was, $900 or $1,200, but that came like a month or two later, and it was a little anticlimactic.
So you were already kind of into January, February, the new year.
Yeah. And so, but I did take a moment to like acknowledge and say, okay, good job, we got it done.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So what made you then, so with all the parts of the business as you're growing, what made you turn to podcasting? Because it's a big element in what you do and how you promote yourself, connections. What made you decide to do one?
I think it has to do with, I love teaching. I love taking complicated information and breaking it down into applicable nuggets of understanding so that people can really go take this material that's been very esoteric for many years, whether it's the psychology side or the laws side, or even sometimes the tactical outer game feels very esoteric. It feels very mysterious. Like, I don't understand how to do that. So fundamentally, I love teaching and I love to break this down. So the podcast was a natural evolution of that. And we do something that I think is fairly unique on the podcast. We do 3 episodes each week, where one is an interview, one is a coaching uncut episode, which is a recording of a coaching call that I do with a client. So people who are interested in up-leveling their thinking and how to approach success in business, they can have access to this coaching on the podcast, and it's a real give value add, and you have to translate it to your own business, but you get to hear the kinds of things that come up for people. And then the third piece is teaching content. So I do a topic every week on either the laws or an outer game marketing strategy, where this is how to apply it, this is what we're doing. So I think fundamentally I got into it because I love teaching, and I'm an auditory learner and an auditory processor, if you will. So podcasting made a lot of sense for me, and I love talking to guests and people, and it's been great for the business. We have a lot of clients who listen to the podcast. Some of them become a client immediately, but some people listen for 3 months, 6 months, a while, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I want to take the next step. And then they understand who we are and what we're doing, so it makes good sense for them. Like they're already like a yes. They just want to know what would be the best support for me.
So three podcasts in terms of delivering different content. It's quite time consuming creating content in that space. How do you manage that? Do you batch it? What's your sort of tips on that side?
Yeah. So we do something, we just started doing this, Kelly, and so far it's working. I think we're going to tweak it a little bit, but we're doing something now called recording weeks, where the main priority for the week, like I clear the calendar of 90% of my other meetings, and the main priority are interviews on other people's podcasts and interviews of people on our podcast. And we do some other recordings as well, like content for the podcast, and then, different videos that I want to get done and need to get done. But we block a week out of the month for that. We might switch that up a little bit and do 90 days of like intense podcast engagement, where we're doing a bunch of interviewing during those 90 days and then having that for the rest of the year kind of thing. We're playing with the frame up of that. So that's how we do the interviewing side of things. And the content creation, I would love to say that it's worked to do it during recording week, because that was the plan. That was my vision. The truth is that we booked so many interviews that hasn't left me the spaciousness to do the thinking, because for every teaching podcast that I do, there's conceptualizing the idea, writing out my talking points, and then actually getting it recorded. And that is a whole process, and it probably takes 2 hours per episode. So, and I'm not a dancing monkey, so I can't just do 2 hours and then another 2 hours and then another 2 hours. Like there's a spaciousness that's required for that. So what's worked really well for me for the content is, I will wake up in the morning, and as I'm, doing my morning routine, I will write out my notes and then record it while it's fresh in my head that morning, and have that ready to go. So still iterating on that process. The coaching on calls we just record, those are easy to do.
It's because I've also been trying to work a system with regards to YouTube content and creating content for podcasts. So I've been trying with having days where I know, because I've looked at the option of doing a week, but I've found I've always needed to do something before that week's come around in the calendar. And it's nearly like if I allow a day, so I'm trialing with that. But I do like the idea where you can immerse yourself completely into content creation of what it is, whether it's creating reels or doing, podcasts or doing YouTube. And you've got to try it. And I think what works for you 1 year might not work for you in 6 months' time. And it's, I guess, about evolving with that as well.
Completely, 100%. And we're iterating on the process. We have, all of this that needs to get done during that week, and what's actually viable, what's actually doable. So like this next week, I'm like, we can only do 3 days of interviews. We can't do 5 days, because that doesn't leave me enough time to do the other stuff. But I do, excuse me, I do like the idea of block scheduling. Sometimes 1 day a week is like another version of this is figuring out all the content that you want to get done, really playing that out, and then getting it on your calendar weekly, and then you're building a process. You're building it out for the future. So we all test and tweak. And
I often think about when I first started my business, because one of the but challenges I think people find it is it's so time consuming, or, I wish I didn't have to do it, or I'm not into it. And I say, well, but you have an audience. 20 years ago when I started business, we still used fax machines in the Middle East, and we had to go knocking on doors, and it was a very different space. What would be, your tips to someone who's potentially just starting a podcast or looking to start?
Yeah, I would. Okay, so I have a lot of ideas on this. So one of the things that really worked for us, and if you want, I can find, we did a whole long blog post on, it was like a blueprint on how to start a podcast. That would be a useful framework, and I can find that link for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. But, one of the things we did in the beginning was we recognized that in order to get onto iTunes quickly, because sometimes it takes a long time, you need to have good audio quality. You need to have good, it just needs to be a well-polished thing. So we bought high quality equipment and just went for that. That was important. So on that blog post, I do the links to the equipment that we bought. And then we did ask friends and family to listen to the first few episodes. We did 5 pillar episodes. So we recorded 5 foundational pillar episodes to the podcast and dropped those all at once. So there was something on the podcast. Yeah, content there. And then we asked friends and family to go listen and to, give us a review on it and on iTunes to kind of get some credibility in the beginning. And we shared it with our list and our, in our community, and people started listening and loving it. Then I think the next thing is to ask people to engage, ask people to like and share and do that regularly. We've kind of fallen off the wagon on that, and just saying it out loud is reminding me to do that again. In the beginning, that was our message constantly. We weren't asking people to do anything. We did let people know that we had resources there that they could go find, but fundamentally it was just, like it, share it, and that worked really well. I think in the beginning we didn't do guest interviews. It was just a content podcast, and that slowed our growth. And I learned, to grow a podcast, you need to have guests on, and you need to be on other people's podcasts, and that's how, right? That's how it works. So that was a miss. Even though my team was saying that, I was like, no, and then I got it. And so those would be my recommendations for starting out, and to get really clear about what your theme is. Like, what are you going for? We did do good graphics, what I think are good graphics, and I think we did do we got some music created, some proprietary music for the intro of the podcast, and I think that gives it a nice little polish.
I got my audience, my Instagram audience, to pick my podcast cover. So we had like 6 to start with, and then I got everyone to say which one, and then we got down to the final 2, and it was really interesting because they were all part of the journey of that before it actually went live. So they all knew about it rather than going, hey, my podcast has just arrived. So there was a little bit of that build up to it as well, which I think also helps, rather than just waking up one day and going, hey, I've just got this here for you. What are your plans for going forward now? So, because you'd mentioned, I guess, to bring it back, success is about the goals rather than, hey, I've crossed the 7-figure of what I want to do. What's next for you and the podcast and the team?
Yeah, so we have an amazing small but mighty team. We're about 8 or 10 people on the team, between employees and contractors, and the goal is to scale the business, both in terms of revenue, but more important, how we're doing the work that we do. So it's very important for me to have a great impact, and our clients have great success. I'm regularly getting emails and comments like, whoa, like I just made a sale for $25,000, right? Like people are just having amazing success. And we just had a client have her first $1 million month. That blew my mind. I was like, doing so well. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. But so our goals right now are to take what we've already done and make it better, to make it so that it can reach more people, and that it's not so dependent on the individuals on the team, whether it's me or someone else. And this is very important to me, while keeping the intimacy, because the women who are part of our programs, they are there because they want a community of other driven women who want success, and they feel like other people don't get them. There's like a sense of, they want they're into the personal growth, they're into taking responsibility, they want more for themselves, and they have that entrepreneurial spirit, and their best friend might not get them. Their best friend might be great in other ways, but not get them. And so how do we really grow and scale and keep the intimacy? So those are our growth edges right now. How do we do that?
I love that. Well, I wanted to wrap up with just to say thank you so much and sharing like so much value. How can people find some of these resources? So I'm going to leave them in the show notes, but any other places or ways to connect with you, now is the chance.
Okay, awesome. So fundamentally, we're on all the social media channels, both as me, Amira Alvarez, and The Unstoppable Woman. So you can find both of that. We have, like, if you're interested in the laws of success, we have a download, a cheat sheet on the laws of success. And we also have, different trainings on how to approach time and sales and those different outer game strategies that we've been talking about. But we have this cheat sheet on the laws, which I think your audience, if they're into what we talked about, would really dig that. And they can find that at 𝗕𝗿𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 they can just grab that download. It's free. And then listen to our podcast. I would love to have your anyone who resonates with this, listen in and access all the good stuff there. So
listen to the podcast and make sure they rate it.
Yes,
and comment.
Thank you.
That's what.
Yes. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and the podcast is just the Unstoppable Woman. Yeah.
So I've got one question on that, because I thought, I didn't know if anyone's asked you at the end of your podcast, when you had asked me what makes someone unstoppable, or what is it? What makes you unstoppable? So I want to reverse it, because I don't know if anyone's asked you, because you asked it on your podcast. Can you answer that question? Has other people asked you that then?
So the question is, what makes you, Kelly, an unstoppable woman? And no one, I don't know that anyone's asked me on a podcast. No, not in that framework. So you're the first. Good job.
So Amir, what makes you an unstoppable woman?
I ask myself that question in my head all the time, and I come up with 1,000 different answers. So it might be different tomorrow, but fundamentally it's persistence, like knowing what I want and persistence to achieving that. I don't give up on myself, that I actually know how to achieve my goals and I stay persistent in achieving them.
Love that. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Amira. It was so good to speak to you again, sharing so much value. Until next time, bye for now.